You're listening to Forecast, the marketing podcast for professional services leaders. If you're looking to generate more leads, win more deals, and take your firm to the next level, this show is your shortcut. Hey there, folks. Welcome back to the show. I am your host, Ahmed Munawar, and I am so excited today to bring you the one and only John Nemo. If you don't know who John Nemo is, I gotta say, I feel a little bit sorry for you, but I'm also very excited to be the one to bring him into your world. John is the founder of LinkedInRiches.com, where he helps coaches and consultants generate more leads using LinkedIn. But I brought John onto the show today not to talk about LinkedIn, but to talk about webinars, because John has built his entire business around using webinars as a sales tool for his services and for his programs. And in this episode, John's gonna share with us the secrets, the best practices, the tips and the tricks that you can use to generate leads using webinars for your services and for your consulting. To grab the show notes for this episode, head over to forecast.fm/Nemo. That's forecast.fm/NEMO. If you're new to the show and you haven't yet subscribed, do us both a favor. Head over to your favorite podcast player, type in Forecast Marketing in the search box, find the blue graphic, click on it and hit subscribe, and you'll get all the latest episodes right there in your feed. With that, here is John Nemo. Mr. John Nemo, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, honored to be here. Thanks for having me.
Listen, man, why don't you kick this off by giving us kind of the quick backstory behind John Nemo? You know, who you are, where you come from, and what you're doing now.
Well, it all started March 28th, 1975 when I was born. Oh, not that much of a backstory. Okay.
Hey, I got all day, but our listeners might want the shorter version.
Okay. March 29th was pretty quiet, just sleeping in. No. Okay. So long story short, grew up in the Midwest as the son of two English teachers and was always fascinated with storytelling, teaching, books, things like that. Got into a career in journalism. So worked for newspapers, the Associated Press, and then transitioned after that into public relations. And then also once social media came on the scene, really got involved with social media consulting and things like that. Quit my day job back in 2012. I had a safe six-figure day job, but I was really bored, and I really wanted to do my own thing. And so I took a huge leap of faith. I started my own marketing agency back in 2012 and, was able to really grow it. So this is where kind of the fun success story type stuff comes in. Was able to grow it using LinkedIn to find all my new leads and all my business. And where that leads to today's conversation is, once I really understood how to get prospects on LinkedIn, now I became obsessed with how do I get more prospects for coaching, consulting, things like that, because I do a lot of coaching and consulting and training. How do I get them in less time? How do I automate this process? And where that really led me in the last couple of years was doing webinars, both live webinars, but also what I call hybrid, which is kind of a mixed version of a live webinar. And then the holy grail is automated webinars. And so really that's where my business has exploded, is using these automated webinars to get new clients, to get new prospects for coaching, consulting, online courses, trainings, all with online approaches, automated webinars, automated emails. My big obsession, what really drives me is the desire. I work from home, obviously, entrepreneur, love that life. We got 3 little boys. And so I want to spend as much time as I can with my family and having that flexibility and not trading dollars for hours, especially when it comes to lead generation. And so really what I found and what I think this audience would be most interested in is being able to automate so much of the lead generation process, both with finding prospects on LinkedIn to, automated email series to content marketing, but especially then in the space with webinars and the automated nature of that and being able to get clients as a result. And so that, in the nutshell version, not going all the way back to 1975 is what I'm up to today. So hopefully that gives people a good picture.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent story. And let's dive now a little bit deeper into the topic of webinars. Now, this is something that, we were chatting offline. Webinars are pretty common in many industry verticals and niches.
But a lot of folks who are listening might only be familiar with webinars in the context of selling a product or an online course, but not so much in the context of selling a service, especially a high-touch, high-value service like many of our listeners sell for themselves. So make the case for us as to how webinars can fit into a high-touch, high-value consulting service offering.
Yeah, this is perfect because, again, this goes back to my backstory. Growing up as the son of two teachers, right? And what I discovered very early on as an entrepreneur, as somebody running my own business, coaching, consulting, was teaching really sells, okay? So if you think about it as a coach, as a consultant, the nature, like you said, Ahmad, is it's high touch, right? It's personal, it's one-on-one. You have to build an emotional connection. You have to talk to people, right? And the way that webinars bridge that gap is, instead of driving all over town and doing one-on-one coffee meetings and playing professional footsie with people, right? And laying out your vision and laying out your plans and demonstrating your expertise, what if you could bottle up, your personality, bottle up your communication style, bottle up your expertise, your knowledge, your authority, your ability to teach and demonstrate the value you bring? What if you could bottle all that up, encapsulate it into a 60-minute presentation, and then at the end have the ability for anyone anywhere in the world to go further with you, to fill out an application to join your coaching program, to book a no risk consulting call, to qualify themselves to become part of your training, to buy a product or a service that you have, book an hour of time. That's really what webinars do. Webinars are amazing because they take you personal, they're your personality. People hear your tone of voice. They get your story. They get to understand why you do what you do. They build that emotional element that is so critical, right? When we think about when people buy, we buy based on emotion. We buy based on how someone makes us feel. Yes, maybe I signed up for this webinar, with this consultant because I was curious about how to get more leads on LinkedIn. But by the end, I really knew and liked and trusted this presenter. I really felt a bond. I felt like, wow, he gets me. I love his story. I want to do the same things. I feel comfortable. I feel knowledgeable. And wow, he has a program where I can work with him personally. Like, there's such a rock star element to this. When you really present a webinar and do a great job, and we can talk about how you can do that, a pitch perfect webinar every time. You can bottle it all up with a hybrid version. But when you create an awesome webinar, it's just like speaking on stage. It's just like rocking a room full of 500 people. It's just like giving a keynote address at a conference. People are in awe. They're like, whoa, this guy is amazing. Like, you really brought the goods. You were funny. You were engaging. You were entertaining. And yet I learned so much. I started to see the opportunities, and you really opened my eyes to this and that. So by the end of that webinar, people are just like a room full of engaged prospects. What's next? Wow, I could work with you directly. Where do I sign up? How much is it? Right? Like, oh, I could get into your program. I want to apply. Like, you've got people emotional, warmed up, and ready. And of the best webinars are really an hour-long introduction to you and to the brand of you as a coach or consultant. And it becomes very easy once you understand how to formulate and format a successful webinar, how to lay all that out so it naturally flows, so it's not sleazy or salesy or spammy. But that's just the opportunity I really want the audience to hear today, is this is what's possible with webinars.
Yeah, I think the speaking analogy is really a powerful analogy, right? If you ask anybody, hey, would you like to get in front of, a couple of hundred or 500 of your ideal clients in a room and deliver a speech, a talk? Everybody understands the benefits that come with that, the authority, the positioning, the opportunity to engage. And I like what you said there, because a webinar is effectively like doing that, but, at scale, right? Where you're not getting on stage every single time. And I know we're going to get to this, but you can actually package kind of the perfect version of your speech.
Yes.
So they only see that one and not the 10 before that where you made mistakes and you ummed and you awed and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and you think about here's the biggest revelation with webinars. People can do it on their own time. It's so hard, if you think about scaling, like you talked about 1-to-1 versus 1-to-5, I used to do this when I was building my coaching and consulting business, and my marketing agency I would schlep around town and drive to little networking groups, right? And hope one person signed up, right? And I'd have to use my energy and use my time and be on and have a good delivery. And, heck, I'd have to like dress up and everything else, right? With a webinar, I'm landing clients from all over the world. Right before I got on this call, I had people from Honduras and Mexico and Uganda and Australia checking out my automated webinar, signing up for a service, buying an online class. Like, they can do it on demand. They can do it when it's convenient for them. And that expands, I go back to my parents in that analogy. They were both English teachers and professors at a university. They were limited to one classroom, once a day with 30 students. You and I have no limit. Our classroom is the world, right? So the ability now as well to target your exact ideal coaching or consulting clients, to use a tool like LinkedIn to find them, to invite them to a webinar that's going to be of interest to them, then to deliver on your promise is where the magic is. And that's how you scale and grow a coaching or consulting practice while you sleep, while you do other things. Because again, it's automated. You package up your best self, your best presentation, you make it very clear how people can take the next step, and then you don't have to waste the time anymore, playing professional footsie, trying it out one-on-one, 1 to 5, 1 to 10, the ladies sewing circle club across town wants you to talk. Like, you don't have to do that. That's what I want people to understand with webinars.
I mean, unless you really like the ladies sewing circle.
Well, maybe you do. Maybe you want to sew. Here's the thing. I'll never forget. This was a light bulb moment for me, Ahmed. I remember back before I really understood webinars, a guy called me, a guy who had read one of my books. And now my background, like I have online courses on how to do, how to sell with webinars, how to sell using LinkedIn, and have a best-selling book called LinkedIn Riches. And a guy had bought my book, LinkedIn Riches, and, was a client of mine. I'd done some consulting, and he goes, hey, I have a client of mine that could really use your training. Why don't you come over and I'll introduce you, and you can meet with them for a couple hours, and hopefully you can close them. So I remember this very vividly, thinking, well, it's only, I got a 1-in-1 shot. And I drove across town, dressed up, fought the traffic, 45 minutes there, gave them all my best stuff for 2 hours. And they were just like, yeah, actually, we're not really interested. No, thanks. And I drove home, and I'm like, you idiot. Why did you waste that time? It was half my day. And what I realized was they just weren't in the right frame of mind that day, or they had something else, or they had a different objection. Whereas when I go on a webinar, and whether it's live, hybrid, or automated, I've got hundreds of people, and getting people that are ready to buy in the moment without me having to waste the time, feeling them out and testing the room and doing it one-on-one. And once I've changed that, and especially with a high-ticket, high-value consulting, practice or program, you don't want to waste your time. And it does take a ramp-up period to warm people up. You're not going to get people into your coaching program through a Facebook ad or a blog post, right? You've really got to deliver something and build a bond, which could take, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes. And once I understood, I have this ability to do that online versus driving across town for, one shot with one person, that opened up the floodgates. That's where I went from, scrapping along, getting clients here and again, and chasing. Now I have people chasing me. Because they come in, they consume the webinar, and if I've done my job, and if they're the right type of customer for me, they want to work with me. The question now becomes, where do I sign up? What are the monthly payments? How do I get going with your program? Instead of, sitting at the back of the room with their arms folded going, who are you? Why should I believe you? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I hope folks are appreciating the benefit of qualifying your buyer before you have a conversation, because I think that's really where this is really powerful, and you've explained it beautifully. Is if somebody comes to your webinar, first of all, that's a qualifier. Yes. If they show up, if they're interested in the topic and you pick the right topic, then I'm going to get to how to do that, then that's a qualifier. If they make it to the end, 60 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it is, that's a qualifier. If they take action, that's a qualifier. Now, when you have that conversation, it's no longer about, what do you do? Right?
No, exactly. They're ready. They have told you. I mean, and again, you don't have to have everyone become your customer. Only the people that are qualified and want to work with you. I know this as a coach and consultant. I hate working with people that aren't a good fit for me. I hate working with people that don't like my personality. Right. And so what the webinar does for me is actually sort and sift the people appropriately, because there are going to be people who don't like my gregarious, crazy, outrageous personality. Fine. I don't want to work with you. Like I love to joke and have fun and be passionate. And those are the kind of coaching and consulting students I like too. If you're more reserved and laid back and, analytical, that's fine. Right. But that will come across in a webinar and attract that type of audience, which is great. Like that's what I love about this is webinars marry the face-to-face, in-person emotional connection of being in a room with someone with the content, the ability to demonstrate value and expertise, and then, also combining all that with the automation tools to make it very easy for someone to take that next step and sign up.
Yeah, I think the personality element is critical. And I just want to step on this point for a minute because I've attended a couple of your webinars, and this is actually the first time that we're speaking one-on-one. And the experience to me feels very seamless. Like it feels like this is our third, fourth, or fifth conversation because I've heard you deliver on a webinar and you sound now just like you did on the webinar. It's the same John Nemo. That this is your true, authentic self. And I think when people approach webinars, they might get into, teaching mode, right? They might think they have to sound smart or sound a certain way or present things a certain way. But I love what you've done because you put your true, authentic self out there so that when people do get into a conversation with you, it feels like we've known each other for so long.
Hey, this is perfect timing. I want to get into what I call my 10 irrefutable laws of a successful webinar. Okay, so all our listeners, pull over the car, don't crash, get out your pen and paper. Okay, you're leading right into what people need to know. I've been doing webinars for the last 4 or 5 years now. I've spent thousands of hours, sold a ton, 6 figures worth of classes through this, bought, I don't even want to admit publicly how many webinar classes and trainings I bought. Like I'm obsessed with this medium. And what it really boils down to, if you want to have a successful webinar, if you want to sell your service on here as a coach, there's 10 specific things. And I'll just run through them very quickly. I go more in depth on my trainings and everything. But the first one is very simple. You've got to teach, right? That's number one is teaching will sell. And then what you talked about earlier, Ahmed, is number two is you build authority and credibility, right? So you're able to say, I've been a coach for this many years, or here's where I've been published, or media appearances. That's number two is you demonstrate some authority and credibility. Number three, and this is what we were just talking about, you must entertain people. I call it infotainment, right? Give people the information, the data, what they need to learn, the tips, the techniques, but do it in an entertaining way. There's no law against having fun on a webinar. There's no law against being engaging and delivering things with a sense of humor or great analogies, right? That's number three is entertain. Number four, and this is critical to what we've been talking about, you've got to be relatable and memorable. People have got to know, like, and trust you on a webinar. That's where your personality, like you said, it's the same John Nemo. Like, he's this crazy in person, right? Like, it's the same me. And number five, halfway through, let's use story as a delivery vehicle, right? Facts will tell, but stories will sell. Data, a story is really just data with a soul. I heard someone say one time, so you've got to be able to tell stories. What I do on my webinars, and you've been on them, Ahmed, so I wrap up the data in stories. I always try to tell you a memorable story. That's just how human brains are wired is we don't remember all the data and statistics about, let's say, world hunger. But if you show us, with video and images, the story of one kid starving in this town in Africa, we're emotionally impacted. We have a face like to put with the data and the news. Like you see this every night on your evening news, right? If there's a trend or a story, they always interview an individual person being impacted by it. So storytelling. Also, I could go on forever and I will. Number 6, you've got to keep it simple, right? With webinars, we really need to keep it simple. Use your simple analogies and teaching points to sell your complicated elements. One thing you got to realize with webinars is, the person that teaches the most does not sell the most services. If you overwhelm people and overteach and get complicated on your webinars, you're not going to sell. Now, another point I know you wanted to talk about, and this might be a good place to stop, is interrupting people, right? Interrupting their patterns, the shock and awe. You want me to tell the Send It In Jerome story right now?
Yeah, I think you have to. You have to tell the story.
So one of my favorite things to do on webinars, if you think about human beings and the way that we take in a presentation or information, we still all have that cave person or reptilian brain of, if we think we know what's coming, we start to tune out. Right. But if you kind of shock me and if something comes up that I wasn't expecting, I get alert. I pay attention. So with webinars, it's very important to interrupt people. It's very important to use what I call shock and awe, not like, cheesy or over the top kind of crazy. You don't have to have like, somebody come out in a Halloween mask and scare everyone. But what you need to do is break up the patterns so they don't know what's coming next. So for example, I tell a story about how I used LinkedIn, how in 14 seconds, I got a $10,000 client, right? A $10,000 marketing and coaching client. And the simple data of it is I looked at a guy's profile on LinkedIn. I realized there was some personal information about him. I wrote him a personal note on my invitation, struck up a conversation, a day later made a phone call and landed a $10,000 contract. Now, if I told you that data on the webinar, you're kind of paying attention going, yeah, whatever. But instead, I tell the story of what the personal data was, which was this guy went to the University of Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania. And the years that he went to school there, according to his LinkedIn profile, I remembered the basketball team had this famous play, Send It In Jerome. The college basketball team was on national TV one day. A guy went up to dunk the ball into the hoop, and it shattered the glass backboard. And the announcer, as it happened, screamed out, "Send it in, Jerome! Send it in!" And the crowd went crazy. And this was pre-YouTube. This was like 1987, but it would have been viral. Trust me, it was in a pre-internet world viral. So I knew that guy went to college when that episode happened. So I wrote that in my LinkedIn invite. The guy writes back right away, and I tell this whole story on my LinkedIn Riches webinar. He writes back, "I was at the game. Oh my gosh," and so all of a sudden he's emotional. We're engaged. We're talking back and forth on LinkedIn. Get a contract. But that's an example of interrupting a pattern. Now, there's 3 more I want to finish with here when we talk about these 10 irrefutable laws of a successful webinar. These final 3 are critical, right? Number 8 is you've got to deliver value. The big thing I learned early on, especially if I want to sell a high ticket, coaching program, consulting program, your ask at the end of the webinar has to be in direct proportion to the amount of trust you've earned. Right? How valuable are the tips that you've shared up to this point? Have you demonstrated enough expertise and authority to earn that type of ask? Now, depending on what your ask is, that can shape the content of your webinar. If your ask is simply, "Hey, do you want to fill out an application and, be considered for my program?" That's different than, "Hey, I want you to, put down a $5,000 deposit at the end of this webinar for my, mastermind program," whatever it is, right? So that's number 8. Number 9 is, obviously, we've got to overcome objections. All throughout the webinar, you've got to know your audience. You've got to know what are their core objections, what are the things they get tripped up on, what are they going to have to overcome as far as hurdles in order to sign up for my program, to sign up for my consulting. Then you deal with that as you go. And then obviously number 10, very simple, you've got to have an ask, right? You've got to have an ask at the end of the webinar. And this is where coaches and consultants get stuck because back to the beginning of this interview, they say, "Well, I get it. You can sell a product or a service or a course, but what's my ask?" And it's very, very simple for me. My ask, if I'm a coach or consultant, is, "Would you like to work with me?" There's my ask. Would you like to work with me? Then I want you to go here right now and fill out this application. And you can add some scarcity and urgency and say, the first 10 applications I get, whoever gets accepted into the program gets an extra 1-hour call with me or something like that, right? You add in some bonus and some scarcity, but it's very simple. Just ask people to share their information, to fill out an application, to, go through whatever process it is that you pre-qualify leads. It could be, for the first 5 people that sign up right now for no hassle, no obligation phone call with me, I'm going to give you 45 minutes. Normally it's only 15, but for the first 10 that sign up, you're going to get 45. So sign up right now. Here's the link. Those people are hot prospects, man. They just sat through an hour-long webinar. They signed up. You better believe you're going to close them in 45 minutes, right, of talking one-on-one about their business. But there's all these different ways you can build in an ask. And again, getting people while they're emotional, while they're excited, while they're knowing you, this is where the webinar magic happens.
So John, let's say I'm convinced. All right, I think that webinars could really help amplify my marketing and sales process, generate more qualified leads, get me more deals, and the laws make sense. How do I go about, as a first step, kind of choosing what that topic is that I want to teach on the webinar?
Yeah, great question. My number one way to do this that I learned is using a very simple one question survey. Okay, so if you're a coach or consultant, you go to your normal target audience, the people you're connected to on LinkedIn, your existing clients, your existing prospects. You fill out a Google Forms. It's really easy to use. It's free. SurveyMonkey is another one. You literally write a one-question survey. What do you want to know more about blank? So for me, if I want to sell LinkedIn consulting and coaching services to plumbers, I'll go to plumbers and say, hey, plumber, what do you want to know more about getting clients with LinkedIn, right? Or what do you want to know more about using LinkedIn for marketing? What do you want to know more about, employee retention? Say you're a consultant who helps, HR departments. What do you want to know more about blank topic? And then what people will do when you have them fill out this survey is they will tell you. They will tell you in their own words, in their own phrases, I'm really struggling with this, or I really need help to do that. And what I do then is reverse engineer all that data. So I get 100 replies, 200 replies, and I can talk about that, how I get people to fill it out and what the incentives are. But once you ask them that one question, what do you want to know more about blank? Or, when it comes to blank, where do you need the most help, right? This is a topic that you're an expert on. You just want to hear them tell you what their concerns are. Once they tell you, you take that language and you build your webinar. You'll get some very specific patterns. So for example, when I go to business coaches and consultants that I want to sell my training to, I say, what area are you struggling with most in your business right now? That might be a one question survey. And the coaches and consultants I sent that to recently, 200 of them, probably 170 said getting leads. That was their number one thing was I need more leads. I need more leads. So I knew when I'm creating a new LinkedIn Riches webinar to sell my LinkedIn training to them, the number one bullet point is discover how to get leads with LinkedIn, right? And then riff off of that. Use their language back to them, like parrot it back to them, like Polly want a cracker, like say it back to them because people love the vernacular. If you're using the same words and phrases that your ideal clients and prospects use with your copywriting, then you connect. Then they feel like, oh, this webinar is going to solve my problems. He literally is using the exact phrase I would use about that problem or that question. And that really helps me get people engaged and signed up and excited because my copywriting is basically just taking what they told me in the survey and turning that into the presentation and to the results. And so as far as the webinar itself, you really only need to teach 2 or 3 topics. That's it. You don't need to go overboard and give a master's class in your topic. You just want to give 2 or 3, very concrete things that you're promising they'll learn that for them typically are a quick win or something they can apply right away and use. It should be your best stuff in that area. You shouldn't be holding back. You shouldn't be, teasing them. You should really give them some solid wins, right? Because if you demonstrate that expertise and that knowledge, now they trust you. Now they go, man, if his free tips are this good, imagine what his paid program would be like if I had one-on-one access to this coach all the time. So that's really how I do it is I ask them first. I ask my audience, what do you want help with as it relates to my topic, my area of expertise? Then they tell me, then I turn that into the presentation based on the most popular topics. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I think the conventional wisdom on these kind of open-ended one-question surveys is to send it out to your email list. But as Mr. LinkedIn, and I know you do this because I've seen you do it, I would imagine that sending that one-question survey out to your LinkedIn connections would be a useful channel as well.
Yeah, this is where I get into all my ninja stuff. Like right now, I'm selling probably 1 to 2 classes a day of a $1,500, training to people I meet cold on LinkedIn. And so what you do, the LinkedIn model, the LinkedIn lead generation model is very simple. I go out and I identify the exact person I want to sell to, because LinkedIn has 500 million members. So I know exactly how to target and sort by job title, industry, niche, location. And let's say I want to sell to business coaches, our audience, or consultants, whatever it is. So I go and I connect with business coaches every day. And then I talk to them. I say, hey, so glad we got connected. Tell me more about what you're up to. How are things going? Curious, anything you're struggling with in your business right now. The reason I ask is, I'm obsessed with helping business coaches, use LinkedIn to get more leads. I'm always looking to hear what's going on in the industry, right? So then they write me back, and I look at that and I evaluate that. Then I send them to the survey, or I send them right to the webinar, depending, right? If they say, oh yeah, I do coaching and da-da-da-da-da, and I say, well, I'd love to learn more. Here's a link to a 1-question survey, and then I say, I'm going to be picking a couple of people out of it to get a free half hour of consulting with me. If you want to enter, all you got to do is fill it out, answer the question, put your email in. But yeah, I use LinkedIn every day because I've got thousands of connections that I can sort and tag and message to them. And so you can use LinkedIn to do it. You can use your email list. You can use Facebook ads. You can use your Facebook, following, your fan page, anything and everything. And you really only need 50 to 100 to 200 responses to get a very firm grip on what this audience wants. And once you get enough responses, you'll start to see, okay, these are the topics. These are the 3 things that keep coming up over and over and over. These are the big pain points that this audience keeps talking about. They want a way to solve X. They really need a way to overcome, Y. And then you build your copy and your presentation itself around those 2 or 3 topics, and it's magic. It's gold, because then they go, this is exactly what I've been looking for. It's like you read my mind. And I'm like, I did. I had a survey. You told me what you wanted help with. I just need to frame it up. Because the big mistake I always used to make with webinars was I used to assume that I knew what people needed to know about LinkedIn, right? I used to assume I knew what coaches, consultants needed to know about webinars, and I was wrong. I was wrong. They weren't ready, or they didn't want what I was offering, what I thought was the most valuable. You've always got to ask your audience first and then give them what they want. It's very simple once you think of it that way.
And even if you know what they want, or you have a good hunch or intuition, you'll express it in your own words. And as an expert, your words will be different from somebody who has less of a grasp around the problem. And that's really where the gold is that you discovered, right? Is you want to get the words that the customer is using to express their problem and then repeat those back to them.
Yes. That's the magic with the copywriting, with the headlines, with the bullet points, with the text in your presentation, with the scripts that you use, and I have all these scripts that I give people in my training, like, here's the exact words to say, fill in the blank, but you use those words because, again, if you think about it, I describe what I want to you. If you come back to me in your own, highfalutin, language or vernacular, I might not really understand, or I feel like you don't get me. You know what I mean? They call it, like, politicians do this all the time. Like, well, I know my audience is this type. I'm going to use, this type of language with them, or this type of straight talk, and same in business. Just don't overthink it. Don't assume everybody is you. Don't assume your clients talk like other coaches and consultants do, because they don't. They talk like your clients do, right? Like a hospital administrator that you consult for does not talk like the other coaches in your peer group, right? They don't. So talk like they talk, and that's where those surveys help.
Absolutely. So John, listen, let's kind of wrap this up now with the discussion on technology. This idea of live versus automated versus hybrid. Now you've got a whole thing on how to develop the pitch perfect webinar. How do we make sense of that jungle of options?
Yeah, and this is a great question, because I know it's such a stumbling block for most coaches and consultants when they look at a webinar. It's like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to create one, where to start. I'll just give it to you straight. So very simply, you've got 3 different options. One is the traditional quote unquote live webinar. That's basically where, you sign up, and I'm going to come online at 11 a.m. Central, here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and you're going to come on at the same time, and then we'll talk back and forth, right? I'll run through my slides and talk, whatever. Those are a thing of the past. They're a waste of time, waste of energy. Don't do them. Here's what I would suggest. Okay, let's move right past the live webinar, which, by the way, most people still think is what you have to do, and they're wrong. What I use now is what's called a hybrid webinar model. What that means is I pre-record my entire presentation, the intro, the webinar, the training section, the call to action, the part where I pitch my services. I pre-record it all and save it as a movie file, okay? And then using some of the platforms out there now, like Webinar Jam or EverWebinar are my favorites, I can literally show up. It's still, quote unquote, a live presentation. I can still show up at 11 a.m., Minneapolis time. You can show up too. But all I have to do is come on live at the beginning, call people out by name. Hey, I see Randy in Philadelphia is here. Great to have you here, Randy. Oh, there's Sally. Sally, where are you from? And start interacting and bantering and warming up the room. Then I literally hit play on my computer. And for the next 30, 40 minutes, it plays a pitch perfect presentation. The right energy level, the right tone of voice, all the best slides, all the best graphics. I don't miss a beat. It's me at my finest. And while that's playing and while people are watching that, I sit back in the control room and I run the chat box and I run the polls so I can be bantering with people in the chat while I'm talking to them online. And people love it because they get the best of you, right? They get your best possible presentation and you're also there live. So what you do is then at the end of that, when the file is done playing, you come on live and say, all right, wasn't that awesome? So glad we're able to do this. I'm here live right now. If you've got questions, type them into the chat box, right? And then you're still there live to answer questions and close people. So that's a hybrid webinar example. And I walk through all the details and what to say and how to explain it so people don't feel like you're tricking them or anything like that. Because you can just explain, like, right now I've got a presentation. I'm going to sit back, play this for you, and then I'm going to be here at the same time helping you in the chat. There's all kinds of ways to say that. The third one that I've really perfected that is the best of all is an automated webinar. This is where with a global audience anywhere in the world, they sign up. And again, through EverWebinar, Stealth Seminar, some of these other platforms, they get to pick a time and date that works for them. And they literally sit down and every element, every single part of it is automated. So from the moment they sign up to the emails they get to the actual presentation is all pre-done. They consume it on their own time. And then here's my little ninja secret that nobody else knows about. So I'm telling your listeners, I put in a call to action at the very end of an automated webinar that says, hey, if you're really interested right now, if you have questions for me about my coaching program, about my consulting services, here's what I want to do. Go to this link and we can talk live one-on-one. I will be there. I am present. As long as I'm not sleeping or, walking my dog, I'm going to pick up and we're going to talk one-on-one. What that does is I don't have to sit through all those webinars and wait and talk to people. They come on, and during my day, I use an app called Live Chat. And what it does is it's on my phone and my desktop. So while I'm awake during working hours, even outside walking around, whatever, I'll get alerts and it'll say new visitor. And it'll say on this landing page, post webinar, somebody's on there and they want to chat. And then I can immediately chat up hot qualified prospects one-on-one. Again, I'm not wasting time with tire kickers. I'm not wasting time with people who aren't interested. These are people who just consumed the webinar, said, yeah, I want to talk more to John one-on-one, clicked a link, and immediately I get an alert. So in real time, I now spend 5 minutes closing a deal versus sitting through an hour-long webinar, a 20-minute chat, and then trying to close. So that's how you can take the automated nature of a webinar, but at the very end, put in that live twist of talk to me one-on-one. And again, because of the rock star nature of this, because of, wow, like you get to go talk to the speaker after the presentation, people love it. They're in awe. They're excited. Wow, I'm really getting to talk to you. Your presentation was great. Oh, wow. Makes it much easier than to close them. And this is what I do. I mean, this is the simple way to sell your consulting services, your coaching services is have it automated, have them consume it when it's convenient. But at the very end, when they're, having to decide if they want to keep moving forward, offer that one-on-one time. And it's very simple. You can have a message that pops up if you're not available saying, hey, so sorry I missed you. Leave a message. I'll get right back to you. And that's really where the magic is.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I really like that approach is, I've attended so many webinars, as I'm sure have you and many of our listeners, that are obviously not live, right? But they want you to think it's live, and it's just insulting your intelligence. Like, I know you're not live, right? I know you're not back there drinking coffee. So, like, how stupid do you think I am? But it sounds like you're much more forthright about how it works.
Yeah, here's the thing. I never call it a live training. I always say, when I invite people, the copywriting, the headlines, the sign-up pages say it's a free online training. That's all it says. It never says live. And I make it very clear during the webinar. I say, now, if you've enjoyed this and you want to talk to me live, then click here and I will talk to you, like before you make your decision, before you do whatever. And I don't have any problems. Again, the problem you can get into is if you're trying to trick people, you're going to fail, right? So you just be upfront. Just be like, hey, I hope you enjoy this presentation. Now, if you want to, if you have questions, you want to talk to me before you think about filling out an application or signing up, totally fine. I totally get it. Here's how I like to handle that. I like to do live one-on-one chats. So what you can do is go to this link. You'll see my smiling face. Just start typing in there. I'll reply, right? And that way you're freed up. Like when, I don't mind spending 5 or 6 minutes chatting with somebody if it's going to close a deal for a $1,500 package, right? Like, and that way they still get your best presentation. They don't feel duped or tricked, and they still get to talk to you, right? Where people get in trouble is they're trying to trick people or pretend it's live and it's not. You'll lose so much business if people feel like you're tricking them over the dumbest stuff. So, again, I'm very upfront about it. I don't go out of my way to say, hey, this is recorded, because then people can tune out. But, my job with an automated webinar is I better keep you engaged. I better use those 10 laws, to the best of my ability so that you don't care that it's recorded, that you're engaged, that you're learning, that you're writing down stuff. And then at the end, you've got an obvious call to action of, well, I can go talk to John right now. Okay, cool. Like, it's almost like saying, here, do you want to call me? Just pick up the phone. And it works really well.
Well, that's just it, right? Nobody cares if it's live. As long as the information is valuable,
yes.
No one's going to say, oh, it's not live. I don't want to learn this anymore.
Right.
Like,
exactly. Yeah. That's key, man.
So I love that approach. Listen, John, I could go on all day, but I know you've got webinars to run and live chats to attend to, I'm sure. So thank you so much for coming on the show. Let us know where folks can look you up if they want to find out how you can help them more.
Yeah. So the 10 laws I mentioned today, you can get a free video training series on that. Go to webinarsthatwork.net, webinarsthatwork.net. Or you can get on one of my webinars and see how I do it in real time. Just go to webinarsthatwork.net/join. Either way, you can get free resources, free trainings, really take you inside how this works. So yeah, would love to connect with people. The other place I'm obviously very active is LinkedIn. So just go on LinkedIn, look for John Nemo. You found Nemo, right? You remember the movie. It's not just a fish. It's me too. Find Nemo. And I would love to connect and hear from listeners too, and offer whatever advice I can.
Yeah, if you want to see the 10 laws of webinars in action, then go and attend John's webinar because you will see how each of these 10 laws are executed masterfully. I can't recommend that enough. I'm going to drop links to everything John mentioned in the show notes to this episode. John, thanks again for coming on. It's been a real pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Hey, it's Ahmed here again. Before I let you go, there are 2 things I want you to do. The first is, if you like what you hear, go ahead and subscribe to the show on iTunes or Google Play by visiting forecast.fm and clicking on the relevant link. While you're at it, please do leave us a rating or a review because it helps more people discover the show. The second thing is I want you to grab my free course on the 5 Ps of lead generation for professional services firms. Inside the course, you will get a step-by-step framework to help you generate a flood of new business for your firm. The course is 100% free of charge, and you can get immediate access at 5leadgen.com, and you can spell out 5 or use the number. Either one works. That's 5leadgen.com. Thanks for listening.